Hello, fellow witches and wizards. My name is PhoenixGinny, and welcome to the stream. Welcome to Storytime Saturday number 20. Or the reading of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, chapters 3 and 4. I apologize, it is thunderstorming outside, so if you hear any thunder, I apologize. Or that might be a good thing. We might have great ambient atmosphere or whatever. I don't know. I think the thunder and such is pretty much over now, but you might still hear some of it. I'm thirsty. I'm really thirsty. Hi. I just woke up half an hour ago from a nap. It's been a very busy day, very busy week, and next week is going to be even busier. I'm not looking forward to it. I apologize for missing last week. Wasn't feeling good. I probably could have streamed, but I wouldn't have been able to give it my best, and I really want to give it my best. So, is my camera not centered? I like it to be centered. Hi, Julia. So good to see you. Okay. So, any housekeeping things? Next week, charity live stream. I said that I wanted to do the Innocence Project. I still do, but maybe not next week. Maybe that could be next month's, because we will definitely still be reading this next month. I don't know if I want to do something women-oriented. I was also considering doing something for Ukraine, because that's what everybody's doing, and, I mean, for good reason. I don't know. I haven't really decided it. I haven't fully decided on what charity, but that's next week. I can't believe that it's already upon us again. I feel like I did it just last week. So, yeah, I want to do that every month at the end of the month, so that's next week. Although next week I work on Saturday, but I only work from 11 to 2. So I should still be able to live stream. I just hope that I'm not miserable. Hopefully not. Okay, so chapter 3. I also want to mention all the usual things. If you're new, welcome, especially if you're watching this and it's no longer live. Please feel free to discuss in the chat if you have anything you want to say about what we're reading, or in the comments down below if you're watching it and it's no longer live. Feel free to leave comments on the video. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm only working from 11 to 2, so it's only 3 hours, so it shouldn't be that bad. And I don't actually work with people where I work in the back with the fry products. It'll be okay. But yeah, feel free to leave a comment, as I said. Please leave a like on the stream or on the video. If you want to, if you like it. And if you're not subscribed already, click subscribe and click the bell icon so you can be notified the next time I live stream and the next time I upload. I'm uploading again. I will have another video this week, definitely. It's all done. I literally just need to upload it. So, and if you want more information on my streaming schedule and stuff, follow me on Twitter. That link is in the description. Okay, I'm going to read now. Okay, Chapter 3, The Night Bus. Harry was several streets away before he collapsed onto a low wall in Magnolia Crescent, which is where he will go to encounter the Dementors in Order of the Phoenix. I gotta find that. Maybe I can find it. Although, if I can't, If I can't, I should take the time to make one. Let's see, because there's no way my little special topics Harry Potter class is the only place where you can find this. Oh, let me see. Harry Potter. Pirated books? No, that's not what I want. How do I spell pyramid? Pyramid. No. No. Huh? Why is the word pyramid in the Harry Potter wiki? What? Okay, I guess because the Weasleys go to Egypt. Therefore, we need the word pyramid in the wiki. Okay, that's weird. That's not what I wanted. Oh no. Nope. I left. Okay, let's see. Harry Potter. Literary analysis pyramid. Ooh, that looks interesting. This isn't what I was looking for, but ooh, this is neat. Let me see if I can show you. Hide me. Well, can I show you my other monitor? There it is. Or, you know what, you don't have to hide me. You can just make me small. I found this. I found cool literary things. That's a plot chart. That's not what I was looking for. Nope. But that looks cool. I've filled out these before, not just in school, but when I was writing my own stuff. Oh, what's this? Ooh, interesting. Character analysis pyramid. That's not what I was looking for, but that's really cool. Oh, incident. Dementors attack Harry. First plot point, Harry parts for Hogwarts, knowing that Voldemort is trying to acquire a secret weapon. This is all for the 5th one. This is cool. We've got Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone plot structure, rising action, inciting incident, exposition, climax, falling action, resolution. That's cool. None of this is what I was looking for, but yeah, rising action. Oh, that's cool. This is for Beauty and the Beast. Neat. Ooh. None of this is what I wanted. I might have to make it. Thanks, Julia. I mean, that's why we're here. We're not here just to read. I'm here to I'm here for literary reasons too. Wow, what's this? I don't know. I have no idea. Oh, causes of death. Wow, look at that. Whoa, they have all the deaths in here. Neat. Burnt, hanged, slit throat, stabbing, destruction of Horcruxes, decapitation, old age, mauled, poisoned, drowned, explosion, fiend fire, grim sighting. I guess that's what was his name? Was it Uncle Bilious that died of a grim sighting? Ron's uncle? Collapse of bridge. Strangulation, overfeeding? Overfeeding? Is that in reference to the flubberworms? They had too much lettuce? Azkaban, childbirth, that's Voldemort's mom. Decapitator's already on here. Knocked through the veil, that's Sirius Black. Looked at Basilisk, burned by Harry's hands. We know who that is. Heart struck by curse? Heart struck by curse, what is that? Backfired spell, blasting curse, incomplete decapitation, it's nearly headless neck. Exsanguination, fire, knife wound, and killing curse. That's really cool. Who took the time to do that? Okay. This isn't what I wanted. Come on. I can't be... let me see if I can... Special topics. Harry Potter class. No. The hero's journey. Yeah, we learned about that too in special topics Harry Potter. But no, I don't see it. I might have to make it myself. Defenestration. What is that? Is that real? Is that really what the chart said? I don't recognize that word. Yeah, I might have to make my own. I should do that. I don't know if I have time to make that, like, really quick right now. I don't know. I don't have to do anything super fancy. No, I should wait. I can do it later. I can do it later. I'll make a chart of what I'm talking about. It's not hard to make, but it's the thing that I talk about all the time, the Harry Potter pyramid, where the first book, where each book of the series connects with a different book that it's parallel to on the triangle, on the pyramid. That's why I was searching pyramid. So you have the first one and the last one and the fourth one at the top all connect. And then the second one and the sixth one connect, and the third one and the fifth one. So you're going to see a lot of similarities between this one and the fifth one. They both feature Dementors prominently. They both feature Sirius Black significantly. Harry's especially moody in those ones. And there's probably more. Azkaban is heavily featured in both of them. You know, you have Sirius Black escaping Azkaban in this one. You have the massive breakout in Azkaban in the fifth one. Some HB structural analysis. Yeah. I think it's getting thrown from a window or something. Oh, is it? Okay. When was somebody thrown from a window? I'm sure it's happened. There's so much. So many deaths in Harry Potter, and not just the significant ones. Lots of mistrust in number 3 and number 5. Mistrust. Mistrust of who? You might be right. I just can't think of it at the moment. But anyway, he collapsed onto a low wall in Magnolia Crescent, panting from the effort of dragging his trunk. He sat quite still, anger still surging through him, listening to the frantic thumping of his heart. But after 10 minutes alone in the dark street, a new emotion overtook him. Panic. Whichever way he looked at it, he had never been in a worse fix. He was stranded, quite alone, in the dark Muggle world, with absolutely nowhere to go. And the worst of it was, he had just done serious magic, which meant that he was almost certainly expelled from Hogwarts. He had broken the decree for the restriction of underage wizardry so badly he was surprised Ministry of Magic representatives weren't swooping down on him where he sat. Oh, they will be. Later. Yeah. Nor the Phoenix, they won't be so forgiving. Harry shivered and looked up and down Magnolia Crescent. What was going to happen to him? Would he be arrested? Or would he simply be outlawed from the wizarding world? He thought of Ron and Hermione, and his heart sank even lower. Harry was sure that, criminal or not, Ron and Hermione would want to help him now, but they were both abroad, and with Hedwig gone, he had no means of contacting them. So he feels like he is going to get expelled, and that becomes a real threat for him in Order of the Phoenix. He didn't have any Muggle money either. There was a little wizard gold in the money bag at the bottom of his trunk, but the rest of the fortune his parents had left him was stored in a vault at Gringotts Wizarding Bank in London. He'd never be able to drag his trunk all the way to London. Unless... He looked down at his wand, which was still clutching in his hand. If he was already expelled, his heart was now thumping painfully fast. A bit more magic couldn't hurt. He had the invisibility cloak he had inherited from his father. What if he bewitched the trunk to make it feather light? Do you know how to do that, Harry? I'm sure there is a way. I don't know that you know how to do that. Tied it to his broomstick, covered himself in the cloak. No way. That wouldn't work. Sorry, that's 13-year-old brain Harry idea. That's not gonna work. And flew to London. Then he could get the rest of his money out of his vault and begin his life as an outcast. Oh, honey, there'll be plenty of time for that later. One day you really will be an outcast on the run. That'll happen. It'll come. It was a horrible prospect, but he couldn't sit on this wall forever, or he'd find himself trying to explain to Muggle police why he was out in the dead of night with a trunk full of spellbooks and a broomstick. Harry opened his trunk again and pushed the contents aside, looking for the invisibility cloak. But before he had found it, he straightened up suddenly, looking around him once more. A funny prickling in the back of his neck had made Harry feel he was being watched, but the street appeared to be deserted, and no light shone from any of the large square houses. He bent over his trunk again, but almost immediately stood up once more. His hand clutched on his wand. He had sensed, rather than heard it, someone or something was standing in the narrow gap between the garage and the fence behind him. Harry squinted at the black alleyway. If only it would move, then he'd know whether it was just a stray cat or something else. Lumos, Harry muttered, and a light appeared at the end of his wand, almost dazzling him. Now, would that be enough magic to get him into trouble? I feel like the magic has to be, like, in front of Muggles for it to count, doesn't it? Maybe not. I don't know. He held it high over his head, and the pebble-dashed walls of number 2 suddenly sparkled. The garage door gleamed, and between them Harry saw quite distinctly the hulking outline of something very big, with wide, gleaming eyes. Harry stepped backward. His legs hit his trunk, and he tripped. His wand flew out of his hand as he flung out an arm to break his fall, and he landed hard in the gutter. There was a deafening bang, and Harry threw up his hands to shield his eyes against a sudden blinding light. With a yell, he rolled back onto the pavement just in time. A second later, a gigantic pair of wheels and headlights screeched to a halt, exactly where Harry had just been lying. They belonged, as Harry saw when he raised his head, to a triple-decker, violently purple bus, which had appeared out of thin air. Gold lettering over the windshield spelled the Night Bus. You can actually see this in Universal Studios, and I didn't know that until I got there. That's really interesting. I think they should make it into a ride. I really do. I think that would be worthwhile. I also think that they should make, they have Hogsmeade and they have Diagon Alley. I think they need to make a Ministry of Magic to go to. I think that'd be really cool. I don't know what ride they could put there. Maybe they could put the night bus ride there. I don't know. But they should do it. They should totally do it. That'd be awesome. For a split second, Harry wondered if he had been knocked silly by his fall. Then a conductor in a purple uniform leapt out of the bus and began to speak loudly to the night. Welcome to the night bus. Emergency transport for the stranded witch or wizard. Just stick out your wand hand, step on a board, and we can take you anywhere you want to go. My name is Stan Shunpike, and I will be your conductor this eve. The conductor stopped abruptly. He just caught sight of Harry, who was still sitting on the ground. Harry snatched up his wand again and scrambled to his feet. Close up, he saw that Stan Shunpike was only a few years older than he was, 18 or 19 at most, with large protruding ears and quite a few pimples. What were you doing down there? Said Stan, dropping his professional manner. I fell over, said Harry. What'd you fall over for? Snickered Stan. I didn't do it on purpose, said Harry, annoyed. One of the knees in his jeans was torn, and the hand he had thrown out to break his fall was bleeding. He suddenly remembered why he had fallen over and turned around quickly to stare at the alleyway between the garage and the fence. The night bus's headlamps were flooding it with light, and it was empty. What you looking at? Said Stan. There's a big black thing, said Harry, pointing uncertainly into the gap, like a dog, but massive. He looked around at Stan, whose mouth was slightly open. With a feeling of unease, Harry saw Stan's eyes move to the scar on Harry's forehead. What's that on your head? Said Stan abruptly. Nothing, said Harry quickly, flattening his hair over his scar. If the Ministry of Magic was looking for him, he didn't want to make it too easy for them. What's your name? Stan persisted. Neville Longbottom, said Harry, saying the first name that came into his head. So this bus, he went on quickly, hoping to distract Stan. Did you say it goes anywhere? Yep, said Stan proudly. Anywhere you like, long it's on land. Can't do nothing underwater. He said, looking suspicious again. You did flag us down, didn't you? Stuck out your wand and stuck. His accent is weird. Stuck out your wand and didn't you? Yes, said Harry quickly. Listen, how much would it be to get to London? 11 sickles, said Stan. But for 13 you get hot chocolate, and for 15 you get hot water bottle and a toothbrush, in the colour of your choice. Harry rummaged once more in his trunk, extracted his money bag, and shoved some gold into Stan's hand. He and Stan then lifted his trunk, with Hedwig's cage balanced on top and up the steps of the bus. There were no seats. Instead, half a dozen brass bedsteads stood beside the curtained windows. Candles were burning in brackets beside each bed, illuminating the wood-paneled walls. A tiny wizard in a nightcap at the rear of the bus muttered, Not now, thanks. I'm pickling some slugs, and rolled over in his sleep. That'd be a good trivia question. You have this one, Stan whispered, shoving Harry's trunk under the bed right behind the driver, who was sitting in an armchair in front of the steering wheel. This is our driver, Ernie Prang. This is Neville Longbottom, in. Ernie Prang, an elderly wizard wearing very thick glasses, nodded to Harry, who nervously flattened his bangs again and sat down on his bed. Take her away, Ern, said Stan, sitting down in the armchair next to Ernie's. There was another tremendous bang, and the next moment Harry found himself flat on his bed, thrown backward by the speed of the night bus. Pulling himself up, Harry stared out of the dark window and saw that they were now bowling along a completely different street. Stan was watching Harry's stunned face with great enjoyment. Okay. This is where we was before you flagged us down, he said. Where are we in? Somewhere in Wales? Said Ernie. How come the muggles don't hear the bus? Said Harry. Them? Said Stan contemptuously. Don't listen properly, do they? Don't look properly either. Never notice nothing, they don't. Best go wake up Madam Marsh, Stan, said Ern. We'll be in Abergavenny Abergavenny in a minute. Stan passed Harry's bed and disappeared up a narrow wooden staircase. Harry was still looking out of the window, feeling increasingly nervous. Ernie didn't seem to have mastered the use of a steering wheel. The night bus kept mounting the pavement, but it didn't hit anything. Lines of lampposts, mailboxes, and trash cans jumped out of its way as it approached, and back into position once it had passed. Stan came back downstairs, followed by a faintly green witch wrapped in a traveling cloak. "Here you go, Madam Marsh," said Stan happily as Ern stamped on the brake, and the bed slid a foot or so toward the front of the bus. Madam Marsh clamped a handkerchief to her mouth and tottered down the steps. Stan threw her bag out after her and ran the door shut. There was another loud bang, and they were thundering down a narrow country lane, trees leaping out of the way. Harry wouldn't have been able to sleep even if he had been traveling on a bus that didn't keep banging loudly and jumping 100 miles at a time. His stomach churned as he fell back to wondering what was going to happen to him and whether the Dursleys had managed to get Aunt Marge off the ceiling yet. Stan had unfurled a copy of the Daily Prophet and was now reading with his tongue between his teeth. A large photograph of a sunken-faced man with long matted hair blinked slowly at Harry from the front page. He looked strangely familiar. "That man," Harry said, forgetting his troubles for a moment. "He was on the Muggle news." Stanley turned to the front page and chuckled. "Sirius Black," he said, nodding. "Course he was on the Muggle news, Neville. Where have you been?" He gave a superior sort of chuckle at the blank look on Harry's face, removed to the front page and handed it to Harry. "You ought to read the papers more, Neville." Harry held the paper up to the candlelight and read, "Black still at large. Sirius Black, possibly the most infamous prisoner ever to be held in Azkaban Fortress, is still eluding capture. The Ministry of Magic confirmed today. We're all doing what we can to recapture Black," said the Minister of Magic, Cornelius Fudge, this morning, "and we beg the magical community to remain calm." Fudge had been criticized by some members of the International Federation of Warlocks for informing the Muggle Prime Minister of the crisis. "Well, really, I had to. Don't you know," said an irritable Fudge. "Black is mad. He's a danger to anyone who crosses him, magic or Muggle. I have the Prime Minister's assurance that he will not breathe a word of Black's true identity to anyone. And let's face it, who'd believe him if he did?" While Muggles had been told that Black is carrying a gun, a kind of metal wand that Muggles use to kill each other, the magical community lives in fear of a massacre like that of 12 years ago when Black murdered 13 people with a single curse. Harry looked into the shadowed eyes of Sirius Black, the only part of the sunken face that seemed alive. Harry had never met a vampire, but he had seen pictures of them in his Defense Against the Dark Arts classes, and Black, with his waxy white skin, looked just like one. "Scary-looking thing, isn't he?" said Stan, who had been watching Harry read. "He murdered 13 people?" said Harry, handing the page back to Stan. "With one curse?" "Yep," said Stan, "in front of witnesses and all. Broad daylight. Big trouble it caused, didn't it, Ern?" "Arr," said Ern darkly. Stan swiveled in his chair, his hands on the back, the better to look at Harry. "Black was a big supporter of you-know-who," he said. "Well, Voldemort," said Harry without thinking. Even Stan's pimples went white. Ern jerked the steering wheel, so hard that a whole farmhouse had to jump aside to avoid the bus. "You out of your tree?" yelped Stan. "What'd you say his name for?" "Sorry," said Harry hastily. "Sorry, I forgot." "Forgot?" said Stan weakly. "Blimey, my heart's going that fast." So Black was a supporter of you-know-who?" Harry prompted, apologetically. "Yeah," said Stan, still rubbing his chest. "Yeah, that's right. Very close to you-know-who, they say. Anyway, when that little Harry Potter got the better of you-know-who," Harry nervously flattened his bangs down again, "all you-know-who's supporters were tracked down, wasn't they, Anne? Most of them knew it was all over with you-know-who gone, and they came quiet. But not Sirius Black. I heard he thought he'd be second in command once you-know-who had taken over. Anyway, they cornered Black in the middle of a street full of Muggles, and Black took out his wand, and he blasted half the street apart, and a wizard got it, and so did a dozen Muggles who got in the way. Horrible, eh? And you know what Black did then?" Dan continued in a dramatic whisper. "What?" said Harry. "Laughed," said Stan. "Just stood there and laughed. And when reinforcements from the ministry got there, he went with them, quiet as anything. Still laughing its head off. 'Cause he's mad, isn't he, Isn't he mad? If he weren't, if he weren't when he went to Azkaban, he will be now, said Ern in a slow voice. I'd blow myself up before I set foot in that place. Serves him right, mind you, after what he did. They'd had a job covering it up, didn't they, Stan said. Old street blown up and all them muggles dead. What was it they said had happened? A gas explosion, grunted Ernie. And now he's out, said Stan, examining the newspaper picture of Black's gaunt face again. Never been a breakout from Azkaban before, and as that, beats me how he did it. Frightening, eh? Mind, I don't fancy his chances against them Azkaban gods, eh, That's a good trivia question. Gas explosion. Ernie suddenly shivered. Talk about something else, Stan. That's a good lad. Them Azkaban guards give me the collywobbles. Stan put the paper away reluctantly, and Harry leaned against the window of the night bus, feeling worse than ever. He couldn't help imagining what Stan might be telling his passengers in a few nights' time. Hear about that Harry Potter? Blew up his aunt. What he... We had him here on the night bus, didn't we, He was trying to run for it. Harry had broken wizard law just like Sirius Black. No, you haven't. What you did is not nearly the same thing, Harry. Was inflating Aunt Marge bad enough to land him in Azkaban? Harry didn't know anything about the wizard prison, though he'd ever spoken... Okay. Though everyone he'd ever heard speak of it did so in the same fearful tone. Hagrid, the Hogwarts gamekeeper, had spent 2 months there only last year. Harry wouldn't soon forget the look of terror on Hagrid's face when he had been told where he was going, and Hagrid was one of the bravest people Harry knew. The night bus rolled through the darkness, scattering bushes and waste baskets, telephone booths and trees, and Harry lay restless and miserable on his feather bed. After a while, Stan remembered that Harry had paid for hot chocolate, but poured it all over Harry's pillow when the bus moved abruptly from Anglesey to Aberdeen. One by one, wizards and witches in dressing gowns and slippers descended from the upper floors to leave the bus. They all looked very pleased to go. Finally, Harry was the only passenger left. "Right then, Neville," said Stan, clapping his hands. "Whereabouts in London?" "Diagon Alley," said Harry. "Righto," said Stan. "Hold tight, then." Bang! They were thundering along Charing Cross Road. Harry sat up and watched buildings and benches squeezing themselves out of the night bus's way. The sky was getting a little lighter. He would lie low for a couple of hours, go to Gringotts the moment it opened, then set off where he didn't know. Ern slammed on the brakes and the night bus skidded to a halt in front of a small and shabby-looking pub, the Leaky Cauldron, behind which lay the magical entrance to Diagon Alley. "Thanks," Harry said to Ern. He jumped down the steps and helped Stan lower his trunk and Hedwig's cage onto the pavement. "Well," said Harry, "bye, then." But Stan wasn't paying attention. Still standing in the doorway to the bus, he was goggling at the shadowy entrance to the Leaky Cauldron. "There you are, Harry," said a voice. I was about to be like, "Harry, you idiot," but he's 13, okay? You have to remember, he's 13. 13-year-olds don't have the best mental capacity. He thinks, the best way to escape the law is to go to the Leaky Cauldron, which is the first place they'd look for him after the Dursleys. But that's okay. That's what kids are like that. Before Harry could turn, he felt a hand on his shoulder. At the same time, Stan shouted, "Blimey! Ern, come here! Come here!" Harry looked up at the owner of the hand on his shoulder and felt a bucket full of ice cascade into his stomach. He had walked right into Cornelius Fudge, the Minister of Magic himself. Stan leapt onto the pavement beside him. "What did you call Neville, Minister?" he said excitedly. Fudge, a portly little man in a long pinstripe cloak, looked cold and exhausted. "Neville?" he repeated, frowning. "This is Harry Potter." "I knew it!" Stan shouted gleefully. "Ern! Ern! Guess who Neville is, Ern? He's Harry Potter! I can see his scar!" "Yes," said Fudge testily. "Well, I'm very glad the night bus picked Harry up. But he and I need to set us inside the Leaky Cauldron now." Fudge increased the pressure on Harry's shoulder, and Harry found himself being steered inside the pub. A stooping figure bearing a lantern appeared through the door behind the bar. It was Tom, the wizened, toothless landlord. "You've got him, Minister," said Tom. "Will you be wanting anything? Beer? Brandy? Perhaps a pot of tea?" said Fudge, who still hadn't let go of Harry. There was a loud scraping and puffing from behind them, and Stan and Ern appeared, carrying Harry's trunk and Hedwig's cage and looking around excitedly. "How come you didn't tell us who you were, Neville?" said Stan, beaming at Harry, while Ernie's owlish face peered interestedly over Stan's shoulder. "And a private parlor, please, Tom," said Fudge pointedly. "Bye," Harry said miserably to Stan and Ern as Tom beckoned Fudge toward the passage that led from the bar. "Bye, Neville," called Stan. Fudge marched Harry along the narrow passage from Tom's lantern and then into a small parlor. Tom clicked his fingers, a fire burst into life in the grate, and he bowed himself out of the room. "Sit down, Harry," said Fudge, indicating a chair by the fire. Harry sat down, feeling goosebumps rising up his arms despite the glow of the fire. Fudge took off his pinstripe cloak and tossed it aside, then hitched up the trousers of his bottle-green suit and sat down opposite Harry. "I'm Cornelius Fudge, Harry, the Minister of Magic." "Yeah, charmed, I'm sure." Harry already knew this, of course. He had seen Fudge once before, but as he had been wearing his father's invisibility cloak at the time, Fudge wasn't to know that. Tom the innkeeper reappeared, wearing an apron over his nightshirt and bearing a tray of tea and crumpets. He placed the tray on a table between Fudge and Harry and left the parlor, closing the door behind him. "Well, Harry," said Fudge, pouring out tea, "you've had us all in a right flap, I don't mind telling you, running away from your aunt and uncle's house like that. I started to think... But you're safe, and that's what matters." Fudge buttered himself a crumpet. Oh, I could go for a crumpet right now. And pushed the plate toward Harry. "Eat, Harry. You look dead on your feet. Now then, you'll be pleased to hear that we have dealt with the unfortunate blowing up of Miss Marjorie Dursley. 2 members of the Accidental Magic Reversal Department were dispatched to Privet Drive a few hours ago. Miss Dursley has been punctured and her memory has been modified. She has no recollection of the incident at all. So that's that, and no harm done." How convenient. Fudge smiled at Harry over the rim of his teacup, rather like an uncle surveying a favorite nephew. Harry, who couldn't believe his ears, opened his mouth to speak, couldn't think of anything to say, and closed it again. You're wondering about the reaction of your aunt and uncle," said Fudge. "Well, I won't deny they are extremely angry, Harry, but they are prepared to take you back next summer as long as you stay at Hogwarts for the Christmas and Easter holidays." Harry unstuck his throat. "I always stay at Hogwarts for the Christmas and Easter holidays," he said, "and I don't ever want to go back to Privet Drive." "I'm sorry, Harry. You have to. You'll figure it out later." Now, I'm sure you'll feel differently once you've calmed down." "No," said Fudge in a worried tone. "They're your family, after all." "No, they're not." "And I'm sure you are fond of each other." "No, you're not. No, they're not." Very deep down." I wrote here, "Yeah, no." It didn't occur to Harry to put Fudge right. No one understands. Don't worry about it. He was still waiting to hear what was going to happen to him now. "So all that remains," said Fudge, now buttering himself a second crumpet, "is to decide where you're going to spend the last 2 weeks of your vacation. I suggest you take a room here at the Leaky Cauldron and—" "Hang on," blurted Harry. "What about my punishment?" Fudge blinked. "Punishment?" "I broke the law," Harry said. "The decree for the restriction of underage wizardry." "Oh, my dear boy, we're not going to punish you for a little thing like that," cried Fudge, waving his crumpet impatiently. It was an accident. You don't send people to Azkaban just for blowing up their aunts, especially when they're teenagers and they, can't always control their magic, with hormonal stuff. But this didn't tally at all with Harry's past dealings with the Ministry of Magic. I know, and it won't tally with your future dealings with the Ministry either. They're very wishy-washy. They punish you when they feel like it, when it's most convenient for them. Last year I got an official warning just because a house elf smashed a pudding in my uncle's house, he told Fudge, frowning. The Ministry of Magic said I'd be expelled from Hogwarts if there was any more magic there. Unless Harry's eyes were deceiving him, Fudge was suddenly looking awkward. Circumstances change, Harry. Yeah, they sure do. We have to take into account in the present climate. Surely you don't want to be expelled? Of course I don't, said Harry. Well, then what's all the fuss about? Laughed Fudge. 'Cause you're an inconsistent flip-flopper. You're the worst. Now have a crumpet, Harry, while I go and see if Tom's got a room for you. Fudge strolled out of the parlor and Harry stared after him. There was something extremely odd going on. Yeah, the reason why he didn't want to punish him is because of the Sirius Black thing. Harry doesn't realize that Sirius Black is coming after him. Harry doesn't know that he has a special connection to Sirius Black. Why had Fudge been waiting for him at the Leaky Cauldron, if not to punish him for what he'd done? And now Harry came to think of it, surely it wasn't usual for the Minister of Magic himself to get involved in matters of underage magic. Yeah, that is weird. And I'm not entirely sure about that. Fudge came back, accompanied by Tom, the innkeeper. Room 11's free, Harry, said Fudge. Gets room 11 in the movie, too. That's a good, it's also a good trivia question. I think you'll be, said Fudge, I think you'll be very comfortable. Just one thing, and I'm sure you'll understand. I don't want you wandering off into Muggle London, all right? Oh, come on. Muggle London is fun. I've been, and I really would like to go again. All right, keep to Diagon Alley. And you're to be back here before dark each night. He is only 13. I think he's got a point there. Sure you'll understand. Tom will be keeping an eye on you for me. Okay, said Harry slowly. But why? Don't want to lose you again, do we? Said Fudge with a hearty laugh. No. Best we know where you are. I mean... Fudge cleared his throat loudly and picked up his pinstriped cloak. Well, I'll be off. Plenty to do, you know. Have you had any luck with Black yet? Harry asked. Fudge's finger slipped on the silver fastening of his cloak. What's that? Oh, you've heard. Well, of course he's heard. Jeez, this man is dumb. Well, no, not yet. But it's only a matter of time. The Azkaban gods have never yet failed. Didn't they fail when he escaped? And they are angrier than I've ever seen them. I didn't know they had emotion. Other than hunger. And they won't ever catch him. Now that I think about it, they won't ever catch him. That'll never happen. Fudge shuddered slightly. So I'll say goodbye. He held out his hand, and Harry, shaking it, had a sudden idea. Minister, can I ask you something? Oh, this is awkward. I forgot about this. Certainly, said Fudge with a smile. Well, 3rd years at Hogwarts are allowed to visit Hogsmeade, but my aunt and uncle didn't sign the permission form. Do you think you could... Fudge was looking uncomfortable. No, that's weird. He said, No, I'm very sorry, Harry, but as I'm not your parent or guardian, but you're the Minister of Magic, said Harry eagerly. If you gave me permission, I'm sorry, Harry, but rules are rules, said Fudge flatly. Perhaps you'll be able to visit Hogsmeade next year. In fact, I think it's best if you don't... Yes. Well, I'm off. Enjoy your stay, Harry. And with a last smile and shake of Harry's hand, Fudge left the room. Tom now moved forward, beaming at Harry. If you'll follow me, Mr. Potter, he said. I've already taken your things up. Harry followed Tom up a handsome wooden staircase to a door with the brass number 11 on it, which Tom unlocked and opened for him. Inside was a very comfortable-looking bed, some highly polished oak furniture, a cheerfully crackling fire, and perched on top of the wardrobe... Hedwig! Harry gasped. The snowy owl clicked her beak and fluttered down onto Harry's arm. Very smart owl you've got there, chuckled Tom. Arrived about 5 minutes after you did. If there's anything you need, Mr. Potter, don't hesitate to ask. He gave another bow and left. Harry sat on his bed for a long time, absent-mindedly stroking Hedwig. The sky outside the window was changing rapidly from deep velvety blue to cold, steely gray, and then, slowly, to pink shot with gold. Harry could hardly believe that he'd left Privet Drive only a few hours ago, that he wasn't expelled, and that he was now facing 2 completely Dursley-free weeks. It's been a very weird night, Hedwig, he yawned, and without even removing his glasses, he slumped back onto his pillows and fell asleep. That's chapter 3. Chapter 4 is Leaky Cauldron. And then, do we finally get to go to Hogwarts? Is that next week? I think so. The Dementors, that's on the train, and then Talons and Tea Leaves. Yes. So we get to Hogwarts a lot quicker this year, I feel like. I think. I don't know. But... yeah. I will take my customary 15-minute break, and then we will return for chapter 4. So now is a good time to get a snack, get a drink, take a bathroom break, get up and stretch, do what you gotta do. If you haven't already, click like on the stream, leave your comments down below or in the chat, click subscribe and the bell, and check out my Twitter. And I'll see you in 15 minutes. Welcome back. I made something. I made this. During the break, I made this. This is the... oh, why'd you do that? This is the pyramid I was talking about. So you have... this is the Harry Potter pyramid that I constantly talk about. You have Philosopher's Stone and Sorcerer's Stone, Goblet of Fire, and Deathly Hallows. They all are colored the same. They're all on the points of the triangle because they all have things in common. In particular, all 3 of them feature dragons. There's other stuff too. They're important Voldemort moments. Because Voldemort isn't really featured quite the same way in the other ones. I mean, he's in Chamber of Secrets, but only in memory, and he's in Order of the Phoenix. But only later with Dumbledore. It's not even really involving Harry at all. Is he in? And he's not in Half-Blood Prince. No, he's not in Half-Blood Prince. But he's mostly featured, in these 3. There's other ones too. I can't think of them at the moment. And then you have these ones in the middle here connect to each other. You have Chamber of Secrets and Half-Blood Prince. They both heavily feature Voldemort's past. I think there's other ones too. I'm not thinking about them. But they're very much about Voldemort's past. And then Prisoner of Azkaban or the Phoenix. I talked about that earlier, how it's a lot. Both involve Dementors, Prisoner of Azkaban, Sirius Black, and Harry being particularly moody in those 2. And there's more, and I'll refer to this. But I couldn't find it on the internet, so I made one myself. So there's that. Back to me. Okay, back to reading Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Chapter 4, The Leaky Cauldron. I got a new drink in a nice pineapple cup. Excited for the nice warm weather we're having. Okay. Chapter 4, The Leaky Cauldron. It took Harry several days to get used to his strange new freedom. Never before had he been able to get up whenever he wanted or eat whatever he fancied. He could even go in wherever he pleased, as long as it wasn't Diagon Alley, and as this long cobbled street was packed with the most fascinating wizarding shops in the world, Harry felt no desire to break his word to Fudge and stray back into the Muggle world. Harry ate breakfast each morning in the Leaky Cauldron, where he liked watching the other guests, funny little witches from the country, up for a day's shopping, venerable-looking wizards arguing over the latest article in Transfiguration Today, wild-looking warlocks, raucous dwarfs, and once what looked suspiciously like a hag who ordered a plate of raw liver from behind a thick woolen balaclava. After breakfast, Harry would go out into the backyard, take out his wand, tap the third brick from the left above the trash bin, and stand back as the archway into Diagon Alley opened in the wall. Harry spent the long sunny days exploring the shops and eating under the brightly colored umbrellas outside cafes where his fellow diners were showing one another their purchases. It's a lunoscope, old boy. No more messing around with moonshots, see? Or else discussing the case of Sirius Black. Personally, I won't let any of the children out alone until he's back in Azkaban. Harry didn't have to do his homework under the blankets by flashlight anymore. Now he could sit in the bright sunshine outside Florine Fortescue's ice cream parlor, finishing all his essays with occasional help with Florine Fortescue himself, who, apart from knowing a great deal about medieval witch burnings, gave Harry free Sundays every half an hour. Oh, yeah. I've actually been there. I had chocolate ice cream. It was pretty freaking good. Once Harry had refilled his money bag with gold, galleons, silver sickles, and bronze canuts from his vault at Gringotts, he had to exercise a lot of self-control not to spend the whole lot at once. He had to keep reminding himself that he had 5 years to go at Hogwarts. Yeah, it's too dangerous giving this kid this much money. And how it would feel to ask the Dursleys for money for spellbooks to stop himself from buying a handsome set of solid gold gobstones, a wizarding game rather like marbles in which the stones squirt a nasty-smelling liquid into the other player's face when they lose a point. He was sorely tempted, too, by the perfect moving model of the galaxy in a large glass ball, which would have meant he never had to take another astronomy lesson. But the thing that tested Harry's resolution most appeared in his favorite shop, Quality Quidditch Supplies, a week after he'd arrived at the Leaky Cauldron. Curious to know what the crowd in the shop was staring at, Harry edged his way inside and squeezed in among the excited witches and wizards until he glimpsed a newly erected podium, on which was mounted the most magnificent broom he had ever seen in his life. "Just come out. Prototype," a square-jawed wizard was telling his companion. "It's the fastest broom in the world, isn't it, Dad?" squeaked a boy younger than Harry, who was swinging off his father's arm. "Irish International Sides just put in an order for 7 of these beauties," the proprietor of the shop told the crowd, "and the favorites for the World Cup." "They sure are." A large witch in front of Harry moved, and he was able to read the sign next to the broom. The Firebolt, the state-of-the-art racing broom, sports a streamlined, superfine handle of ash, treated with a diamond-hard polish and hand-numbered with its own registration number. Each individually selected birch twig in the broom tail has been honed to aerodynamic perfection, giving the Firebolt unsurpassable balance and pinpoint precision. The Firebolt has an acceleration of 150 miles an hour in 10 seconds and incorporates an unbreakable braking charm. Price on request. Price on request. Harry didn't like to think how much gold the Firebolt would cost. He had never wanted anything as much in his whole life, but he had never lost a Quidditch match on his Nimbus 2000, and what was the point in emptying his Gringotts vault for the Firebolt when he had a very good broom already? Harry didn't ask for the price, but he returned almost every day after that just to look at the Firebolt. There were, however, things that Harry needed to buy. He went to the apothecary to replenish his store of potions ingredients, and as his school robes were now several inches too short in the arm and leg, he visited Madame Malkins's robes for all occasions and bought new ones. Most important of all, he had to buy his new school books, which would include those for his 2 new subjects, Care of Magical Creatures and Divination. Harry gave a surprise got a surprise as he looked in at the bookshop window. Instead of a usual display of gold-embossed spellbooks the size of paving slabs, there was a large iron cage behind the glass that held about 100 copies of the Monster Book of Monsters. Torn pages were flying everywhere as the books grappled with each other, locked together in furious wrestling matches and snapping aggressively. Harry pulled his book list out of his pocket and consulted it for the first time. The Monster Book of Monsters was listed as the required book for care of magical creatures. Now Harry understood why Hagrid had said it would come in useful. He felt relieved. He'd been wondering whether Hagrid wanted help with some terrifying new pet. As Harry entered Flourish and Blotts, the manager came hurrying toward him. "Hogwarts," he said abruptly. "Come to get your new books?" "Yes," said Harry. "I need—" "Get out of the way," said the manager impatiently, brushing Harry aside. He drew on a pair of very thick gloves, picked up a large, knobbly walking stick, and proceeded toward the door of the monster books cage. "Hang on," said Harry quickly. "I've already got one of those." "Have you?" A look of enormous relief spread over the manager's face. "Thank heavens for that. I've been bitten 5 times already this morning." A loud ripping noise rent the air. 2 of the monster books had seized a third and were pulling it apart. "Stop it! Stop it!" cried the manager, poking the walking sticks through the bars and knocking the books apart. "I'm never stocking them again. Never. It's been bedlam. I thought we'd seen the worst when we bought 200 copies of the Invisible Book of Invisibility. Cost a fortune. We never found them." "Well, is there anything else I can help you with?" "Yes," said Harry, looking down his book list. "I need Unfogging the Future by Cassandra Volapsky." "Ah, starting divination, are you?" said the manager, stripping off his gloves and leading Harry to the back of the shop where there was a corner devoted to fortune-telling. A small table was stacked with volumes such as Predicting the Unpredictable, Insulate Yourself Against Shocks, and Broken Balls When Fortunes Turn Foul. "Here you are," said the manager, who had climbed a set of steps to take a thick, black-bound book, Unfogging the Future. Very good guide to all your basic fortune-telling methods, palmistry, crystal bowls, bird entrails. But Harry wasn't listening. His eyes had fallen on another book, which was among a display on a small table, Death Omens, What to Do When You Know the Worst is Coming. "Oh, I wouldn't read that if I were you," said the manager, looking to see what Harry was staring at. "You'll start seeing death omens everywhere. It's enough to frighten anyone to death." But Harry continued to stare at the front cover of the book. It showed a black dog large as a bear with gleaming eyes. It looked oddly familiar. The manager pressed Unfogging the Future into Harry's hands. "Anything else?" he said. "Yes," said Harry, tearing his eyes away from the dogs and dazedly consulting his book list. I need Intermediate Transfiguration and the Standard Book of Spells, Grade 3. Harry emerged from Flourish and Blotts 10 minutes later with his new books under his arms and made his way back to the Leaky Cauldron, hardly noticing where he was going and bumping into several people. He tramped up the stairs to his room, went inside, and tipped his books onto his bed. Somebody had been in to tidy. The windows were open, and the sun was pouring inside. Harry could hear the buses rolling by in the unseen Muggle street behind him, and the sound of the invisible crowd below in Diagon Alley. He caught sight of himself in the mirror over the basin. "It can't have been a death omen," he told his reflection defiantly. "I was panicking when I saw that thing in Magnolia Crescent. It was probably just a stray dog." He raised his hand automatically and tried to make his hair lie flat. "You're fighting a losing battle there, dear," said his mirror in a wheezy voice. The mirrors talk in this world. It's great. Actually, I think you can go into Madame Mulkin's in Universal Studios and Diagon Alley. Yes, in Diagon Alley. You can go into Madame Mulkin's and they have a talking mirror in there. I think I remember. I didn't stand in front of it because I didn't want it to say anything. But I do believe they had a talking mirror in there. As the days slipped by, Harry started looking wherever he went for a sign of Ron or Hermione. Plenty of Hogwarts students were arriving in Diagon Alley now, with the start of term so near. Harry met Seamus Finnegan and Dean Thomas, his fellow Gryffindors, in quality Quidditch supplies, where they too were ogling the fire vault. He also ran into the real Neville Longbottom, a round-faced, forgetful boy, outside Flourish and Blott's. Harry didn't stop to chat. Neville appeared to have mislaid his book list and was being told off by his very formidable-looking grandmother. Harry hoped she never found out that he'd pretended to be Neville while on the run from the Ministry of Magic. Harry woke on the last day of the holidays, thinking that he would at least meet Ron and Hermione tomorrow on the Hogwarts Express. He got up, dressed, went for a last look at the firebolt, and was just wondering where he'd have lunch when someone yelled his name and turned. "Harry! Harry!" They were there, both of them, sitting outside Florine Fortescue's ice cream parlor. Ron looking incredibly freckly, Hermione very brown, both waving frantically at him. "Finally," said Ron, grinning at Harry as he sat down. "We went to the Leaky Cauldron, but they said you'd left. And we went to Flourish and Blott's and Madame Mulkin's, and I got all my school stuff last week," Harry explained. "And how come you knew I'm staying at the Leaky Cauldron?" "Dad," said Ron simply. Mr. Weasley, who worked at the Ministry of Magic, would of course have heard the whole story of what had happened to Aunt Marge. "Did you really blow up your aunt, Harry?" said Hermione in a very serious voice. "I didn't mean to," said Harry, while Ron roared with laughter. "I just lost control." "It's not funny, Ron," said Hermione sharply. "Honestly, I'm amazed Harry wasn't expelled." I like that part of the movie. I think I was lucky not to be arrested, actually. "So am I," admitted Harry. "If you get expelled, I thought I was going to be arrested." That is what he says. Okay. I can't see. I use a bookmark to mark where I'm reading, so it covers up the next line. He looked at Harry. "Your dad doesn't know why Fudge let me off, does he?" "Probably 'cause it's you, isn't it?" shrugged Ron, still chuckling. "Famous Harry Potter and all that. I'd hate to see what the Ministry'd do to me if I blew up an aunt. Mind you, they'd have to dig me up first, because Mum would have killed me. Anyway, you can ask Dad yourself this evening. We're staying at the Leaky Cauldron tonight, too. So you can come to King's Cross with us tomorrow. Hermione was there as well." Hermione nodded, beaming. "Mum and Dad dropped me off this morning with all my Hogwarts things." "Excellent," said Harry happily. "So, have you got all your new books and stuff?" "Look at this," said Ron, pulling a long, thin box out of a bag and opened it. "Brand new wand. Ah, good for you, Ron. 14 inches, willow, containing 1 unicorn tail hair. And we've got all our books." I'm going to mark this. 14 inches, willow, containing 1 unicorn tail hair. His wand wasn't even his, was it? The one that he had earlier? It used to... I think it used to be Bill's wand. It wasn't even his own. Good for you, Ron. It's also a good trivia question. 14 inches, willow, unicorn hair. Yay. He pointed at a large bag under his chair. "What about those monster books, eh? The assistant nearly cried when we said we wanted 2. "What's all that, Hermione?" Harry asked, pointing at not 1, but 3 bulging bags in the chair next to her. "Well, I'm taking more new subjects than you, aren't I?" said Hermione. "Those are my books for arithmancy, care of magical creatures, divination, the study of ancient runes, muggle studies." "What are you doing muggle studies for?" said Ron, rolling his eyes at Harry. "You're muggle-born. Your mum and dad are muggles. You already know all about muggles. But it'll be fascinating to study them from the wizarding point of view," said Hermione earnestly. "Are you planning to eat or sleep at all this year, Hermione?" asked Harry, while Ron snickered. Hermione ignored them. "I've still got 10 galleons," she said, checking her purse. "It's my birthday in September, and Mum and Dad gave me some money to get myself an early birthday present." "How about a nice book?" said Ron innocently. "No, I don't think so," said Hermione composedly. "I really want an owl. I mean, Harry's got Hedwig, and you've got Errol." "I haven't," said Ron. "Errol's a family owl. All I've got is Scabbers." He pulled this pet rat out of his pocket. "And I want to get him checked over," he added, placing Scabbers on the table in front of them. I don't think Egypt agreed with him. Scabbers was looking thinner than usual, and there was a definite droop in his whiskers. "There's a magical creature shop just over there," said Harry, who knew Diagon Alley very well by now. "You can see if they've got anything for Scabbers, and Hermione can get her owl." So they paid for their ice cream and crossed the street to the magical menagerie. That's where I got my Pygmy Puffs, the magical menagerie. There wasn't much room inside. Every inch of wall was hidden by cages. It was smelly and very noisy because the occupants of these cages were all squeaking, squawking, jabbering, or hissing. The witch behind the counter was already advising a wizard on the care of double-ended newts. Double-ended newts? What is that? So Harry, Ron, and Hermione waited, examining the cages. A pair of enormous purple toads sat gulping wetly and feasting on dead blowflies. A gigantic tortoise with a jewel-encrusted shell was glittering near the window. Poisonous orange snails were oozing slowly on the side of their glass tank, and a fat white rabbit kept changing into a silk top hat and back again with a loud popping noise. Then there were cats of every color, a noisy cage of ravens, a basket of funny custard-colored fur balls that were humming loudly, and on the counter a vast cage of sleek black rats that were playing some sort of skipping game using their long, bald tails. The double-ended newt wizard left, and Ron approached the counter. "It's my rat," he told the witch. "He's been a bit off color ever since I brought him back from Egypt." "Bang him on the counter," said the witch, pulling a pair of heavy black spectacles out of her pocket. Ron lifted Scabbers out of his inside pocket and placed him next to the cage of his fellow rats, who stopped their skipping tricks and scuffled to the wire for a better look. Like nearly everything Ron owned, Scabbers the rat was second-hand. He had once belonged to Ron's brother Percy, and a bit battered. Next to the glossy rats in the cage, he looked especially woebegone. Said the witch, picking up Scabbers. "How old is this rat?" "Dunno," said Ron. "Quite old. He used to belong to my brother." "What powers does he have?" said the witch, examining Scabbers closely. He can turn into a man." "Want to see?" The truth was that Scabbers had never shown the faintest trace of interesting powers. The witch's eyes moved from Scabbers' tattered left ear to his front paw, which had a toe missing, and tutted loudly. "He's been through the mill, this one," she said. "He was like that when Percy gave him to me," said Ron defensively. "An ordinary common or garden rat like this can't be expected to live longer than 3 years or so," said the witch. "Now, if you were looking for something a bit more hard-wearing, you might like one of these." She indicated the black rats, who promptly started skipping again. Ron muttered, "Show-offs." "Well, if you don't want a replacement, you can try this rat tonic," said the witch, reaching under the counter and bringing out a small red bottle. "Okay," said Ron. "How much?" "Ouch!" Ron buckled as something huge and orange came soaring from the top of the highest cage, landed on his head, and then propelled itself, spitting madly, at Scabbers. "No, Crookshanks, no!" cried the witch, but Scabbers shot from between her hands like a bar of soap, landed splay-legged on the floor, and then scampered for the door. "Scabbers!" Ron shouted, racing out of the shop after him. Harry followed. It took them nearly 10 minutes to catch Scabbers, who had taken refuge under a waste-paper bin outside Quality Quidditch Supplies. Ron stuffed the trembling rat back into his pocket and straightened up, massaging his head. "What was that?" "It was either a very big cat or quite a small tiger," said Harry. "Where's Hermione?" "Probably getting her owl." They made their way back up the crowded street to the magical menagerie. As they reached it, Hermione came out, but she wasn't carrying an owl. Her arms were clamped tightly around the enormous ginger cat. "You bought that monster?" said Ron, his mouth hanging open. "He's gorgeous, isn't he?" said Hermione, glowing. That was a matter of opinion, thought Harry. The cat's ginger fur was thick and fluffy, but it was definitely a bit bow-legged, and its face looked grumpy and oddly squashed, as though it had run headlong to a brick wall. Now that Scabbers was out of sight, however, the cat was purring contentedly in Hermione's arms. "Hermione, that thing nearly scalped me," said Ron. "You didn't mean to, did you, Crookshanks?" said Hermione. "And what about Scabbers?" said Ron, pointing at the lump in his chest pocket. "He needs rest and relaxation. How's he going to get it with that thing around?" "That reminds me, you've got your rat tonic," said Hermione, slapping the small red bottle into Ron's hands. "And stop worrying. Crookshanks will be sleeping in my dormitory, and Scabbers in yours. What's the problem? Poor Crookshanks, that witch said he'd been in there for ages. No one wanted him." "I wonder why," said Ron sarcastically as they set off toward the Leaky Cauldron. They found Mr. Weasley sitting in the bar, reading the Daily Prophet. "Harry," he said, smiling as he looked up, "how are you?" "Fine, thanks," said Harry, as he, Ron, and Hermione joined Mr. Weasley with all their shopping. Mr. Weasley put down his paper, and Harry saw the now familiar picture of Sirius Black staring up at him. Still haven't caught him, then? He asked. No, said Mr. Weasley, looking extremely grave. They've pulled us all off our regular jobs at the ministry to try and find him, but no luck so far. Would we get a reward if we caught him? Asked Ron. It'd be good to get some more money. Don't be ridiculous, Ron, said Mr. Weasley, who, on closer inspection, looked very strained. Black's not going to be caught by a 13-year-old wizard. It's the Azkaban guards who will get him back. You mark my words. At that moment, Mrs. Weasley entered the bar, laden with shopping bags, and followed by the twins, Fred and George, who were about to start their 5th year at Hogwarts, the newly elected head boy, Percy, and the Weasleys' youngest child and only girl, Ginny. Ginny, who had always been very taken with Harry, seemed even more heartily embarrassed than usual when she saw him, perhaps because he had saved her life during their previous year at Hogwarts. She went very red and muttered, "Hello," without looking at him. Percy, however, held out his hands solemnly, as though he and Harry had never met, and said, "Harry, how nice to see you." "Oh, Dennis, hi! Good to see you." "Hello, Percy," said Harry, trying not to laugh. "I hope you're well," said Percy pompously, shaking hands. It was rather like being introduced to the mayor. "Very well, thanks." "Harry," said Fred, elbowing Percy out of the way and bowing deeply. "Simply splendid to see you, old boy." "Marvelous," said George, pushing Fred aside and seizing Harry's hand to turn. "Absolutely spiffing." Percy scowled. "That's enough now," said Mrs. Weasley. "Mum," said Fred, as though he'd only just spotted her and seizing her hand too. "How really corking to see you." "I said that's enough," said Mrs. Weasley, depositing her shopping in an empty chair. "Hello, Harry, dear. I suppose you've heard our exciting news?" She pointed to the brand-new silver badge on Percy's chest. "Second head boy in the family," she said, swelling with pride. "And last," Fred muttered under his breath. "I don't doubt that," said Mrs. Weasley, frowning suddenly. "I notice they haven't made you two prefects." What do we want to be prefects for?" said George, looking revolted at the very idea. "It'd take all the fun out of life." Ginny giggled. "You want to set a better example for your sister," snapped Mrs. Weasley. Ginny's got other brothers to set her an example, Mother," said Percy loftily. "I'm going up to change for dinner." He disappeared, and George heaved a sigh. "We tried to shut him in a pyramid," he told Harry, "but Mum spotted us." Dinner that night was a very enjoyable affair. Tom, the innkeeper, put 3 tables together in the parlor, and the 7 Weasleys, Harry and Hermione, ate their way through 5 delicious courses. "How are we getting to King's Cross tomorrow, Dad?" asked Fred, as they dug into a sumptuous chocolate pudding. Oh, that's such a good word. Sumptuous. Sumptuous. Such a good word. "The ministry's providing a couple of cars," said Mr. Weasley. Everyone looked up at him. "Why?" said Percy curiously. "It's because of you, Percy," said George seriously. "And there'll be little flags in the hoods with HB on them. For humongous big head," said Fred. Everyone except Percy and Mrs. Weasley snorted into their pudding. "Why are the ministry providing cars, Father?" Percy asked again in a dignified voice. Well, as we haven't gotten one any more," said Mr. Weasley. "And as I work there, they're doing me a favor." That's not it. His voice was casual, but Harry couldn't help noticing that Mr. Weasley's ears had gone red, just like Ron's did when he was under pressure. "Good thing, too," said Mrs. Weasley briskly. "Do you realize how much luggage you've all got between you? A nice sight you'd be on the Muggle Underground. You're all packed, aren't you?" "Ron hasn't put all his new things in his trunk yet," said Percy, in a long-suffering voice. "He's dumped them on my bed." "You'd better go and pack properly, Ron, because we won't have much time in the morning," said Mrs. Weasley. Mrs. Weasley called down the table. Ron scowled at Percy. After dinner, everyone felt very full and sleepy. One by one, they made their way upstairs to their rooms to check their things for the next day. Ron and Percy were next door to Harry. He had just closed and locked his own trunk when he heard angry voices through the wall and went to see what was going on. The door of number 12 was ajar, and Percy was shouting. It was here, on the bedside table. I took it off for polishing. I haven't touched it, all right? Ron roared back. What's up? Said Harry. My head boy badge is gone, said Percy, rounding on Harry. So's Scabba's rat tonic, said Ron, throwing things out of his trunk to look. I think I might have left it at the bar. You're not going anywhere till you've found my badge, yelled Percy. I'll get Scabba's stuff. I'm packed, Harry said to Ron, and he went downstairs. Harry was halfway along the passage to the bar, which was now very dark, when he heard another pair of angry voices coming from the parlor. A second later he recognized them as Mr. and Mrs. Weasley's. He hesitated, not wanting them to know he'd heard them arguing, when the sound of his own name made him stop, then moved closer to the parlor door. It's another connection with, Order of the Phoenix. In this one, Mrs. Weasley's going to argue she doesn't want Harry to know about Sirius Black, whereas in the fifth one, she doesn't want Harry to know about what the Order is doing concerning what Voldemort is looking for. Makes no sense not to tell him, Mr. Weasley was saying heatedly. Harry's got a right to know. I've tried to tell Fudge, but he insists on treating Harry like a child. He's 13 years old, and Arthur, the truth would terrify him, said Mrs. Weasley shrilly. Do you really want to send Harry back to school with that hanging over him? For heaven's sake, he's happy not knowing. I don't want to make him miserable. I want to put him on his guard, retorted Mr. Weasley. You know what Harry and Ron are like, wandering off by themselves. They've ended up in the Forbidden Forest twice. But Harry mustn't do that this year, when I think what could have happened to him that night he ran away from home. If the night bus hadn't picked him up, I'm prepared to bet he would have been dead before the Ministry found him. But he's not dead, he's fine, so what's the point? Molly, they say Sirius Black's mad, and maybe he is, but he was clever enough to escape from Azkaban, and that's supposed to be impossible. It's been 3 weeks, and no one's seen hide nor hair of him, and I don't care what Fudge keeps telling the Daily Prophet. We're no nearer catching Black than inventing self-spelling wands. The only thing we know for sure is what Black's after. But Harry will be perfectly safe at Hogwarts. We thought Azkaban was perfectly safe. If Black can break out of Azkaban, he could break into Hogwarts. But no one's really sure that Black's after Harry. There was a thud on wood, and Harry was sure Mr. Weasley had banged his fist on the table. Molly, how many times do I have to tell you? They didn't report it in the press because Fudge wanted it kept quiet, but Fudge went out to Azkaban the night Black escaped. The guards told Fudge that Black's been talking in his sleep for a while now. Always the same words. He's at Hogwarts. He's at Hogwarts. Black is deranged, Molly, and he wants Harry dead. If you ask me, he thinks murdering Harry will bring you-know-who back to power. Black lost everything the night Harry stopped you-know-who, and he's had 12 years alone in Azkaban to brood on that. There was a silence. Harry leaned still closer to the door, desperate to hear more. Well, Arthur, you must do what you think is right, but you're forgetting Albus Dumbledore. I don't think anything could hurt Harry at Hogwarts while Dumbledore's headmaster. I suppose he knows all about this. Of course he knows. We had to ask him if he minds the Azkaban guards stationing themselves around the entrances to the school grounds. He wasn't happy about it, but he agreed. Not happy? Why shouldn't he be happy if they're there to catch Black? Dumbledore isn't fond of the Azkaban guards, said Mr. Weasley heavily. Nor am I, if it comes to that. But when you're dealing with a wizard like Black, you sometimes have to join forces with those you'd rather avoid. If they save Harry, then I will never say another word against them, said Mr. Weasley warily. It's late, Molly. We'd better go up. Harry heard chairs move. As quietly as he could, he hurried down the passage to the bar and out of sight. The parlor door opened, and a few seconds later, footsteps told him that Mr. and Mrs. Weasley were climbing the stairs. The bottle of rat tonic was lying under the table they had sat at earlier. Harry waited until he heard Mr. and Mrs. Weasley's bedroom door close, then headed back upstairs with the bottle. Fred and George were crouching in the shadows on the landing, heaving with laughter as they listened to Percy dismantling his and Ron's room in search of his badge. We've got it, Fred whispered to Harry. We've been improving it. The badge now read, Big Head Boy. Harry forced a laugh, went to give Ron the rat tonic, then shut himself in his room and lay down on his bed. So Sirius Black was after him. This explained everything. Fudge had been lenient with him because he was so relieved to find him alive. He'd made Harry promise to stay in Diagon Alley, where there were plenty of wizards to keep an eye on him, and he was sending 2 ministry cars to take them all to the station tomorrow, so that the Weasleys could look after Harry until he was on the train. Harry lay listening to the muffled shouting next door and wondered why he didn't feel more scared. Sirius Black had murdered 13 people with one curse. Mr. and Mrs. Weasley obviously thought Harry would be panic-stricken if he knew the truth. But Harry happened to agree wholeheartedly with Mrs. Weasley. The safest place on Earth was wherever Albus Dumbledore happened to be. Didn't people always say that Dumbledore was the only person Lord Voldemort had ever been afraid of? Surely Black, as Voldemort's right-hand man, would be just as frightened of him. And then there were these Azkaban guards everyone kept talking about. They seemed to scare most people senseless, as if they were stationed all around the school. Black's chances of getting inside seemed very remote. No, all in all, the thing that bothered Harry most was the fact that his chances of visiting Hogsmeade now looked like 0. Yeah, the 13-year-old priorities. I just want to go to Hogsmeade. Nobody would want Harry to leave the safety of the castle until Black was caught. In fact, Harry suspected his every move would be carefully watched until the danger had passed. He scowled at the dark ceiling. Did they think he couldn't look after himself? He'd escaped Lord Voldemort 3 times. He wasn't completely useless. And there we go with the Order of the Phoenix right there. He's going to have paragraphs and paragraphs of ranting about this. It's going to be great. I'm so excited. It's my favorite. I know everybody hates it. I personally love it. OTP. Unbidden, the image of the beast in the shadows of Magnolia Crescent crossed his mind. What to do when you know the worst is coming. I'm not going to be murdered, Harry said out loud. That's the spirit, dear, said his mirror sleepily. But they still have to travel to King's Cross. Well, why not? What else would they do? They can't, kids can't, disapparate. Things can get very, very tricky. So, and they have a lot of kids. So, they need to travel safely with that many people all at once. I was going to write something. This is different than in the movie. Very different. This whole conversation doesn't happen in the movie. Mr. Weasley just tells Harry right off. Where am I going to write that? Not in the movie. Arthur just tells him. Let's spell Arthur correctly. Just tells him. Yeah. Been to King's Cross too. But yeah, that's the end of chapter 4. Any last thoughts about the chapter? Next week, we make it to Hogwarts. The next chapter is very long. So it might be the longest chapter in the book. And then Talons and Tea Leaves. We have our first divination class. Very exciting. That'll be it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like on the stream or on the video, depending on when you're watching this. Please leave a comment what you thought of the stream. Click the like button. Please click the like button if you enjoyed it. Tells YouTube that you like it, and it's more likely to share it with more people the more likes that it gets. And if you're not subscribed already, click the subscribe button and click the bell icon next to it so you can be notified the next time I go live and the next time I upload. I will be uploading again this week. I do have another video ready for you guys. It'll be a building video from The Sims. And I will be live streaming My live streaming schedule will be a little different next week. I won't be live streaming on Friday. I'll be live streaming on Thursday because I have a dentist appointment on Friday during my streaming time. So at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here on YouTube, I will be playing Lego Harry Potter Year 7, Part 1, on Thursday instead of Friday. And then on Saturday, like usual, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on YouTube, we'll be reading chapters 5 and 6 of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and it'll be a charity live stream, so please come for that. And I haven't fully decided on what charity I'm going to go with yet, but I will let you know. And if you want to know more about my schedule and about me in general, I post lots of things. Follow me on Twitter, link in the description. And I think that's it. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a magical day. Bye-bye.